G'day legends, we've got some breaking news about Belal Muhammad. He has had to pull out of his fight, UFC 310, so that is what we are going to be covering today. Belal, the injury, how long the recovery time could take, what are the UFC's options, how a fighter is reacting to it. That is what we're going to be getting into. So, firstly, from the top, Belal Muhammad updated his Instagram story from a hospital bed, letting us all know that unfortunately he has got a pretty savage bone infection in his toe. They've put him on antibiotics through an IV drip, and they're forcing him to move out of the current title fight that he is booked in for, obviously. Now, I know that Belal Muhammad isn't the most likable guy out there, but I don't really want to be part of the MMA stacks on here that we are starting to see online. The guy has just become the world champion. Couple of weeks later, he's realized his dream of finally pushing through the uphill battle that has been his career with the brass over at the UFC. And once he gets that belt wrapped around his waist, a few weeks later, he has found his dreams being absolutely torn to pieces. His dream of being able to defend the title and work on his legacy. That is no longer going to be happening. I've done a little bit of research on this toe infection, the bone infection in the toe, and it is not good. He could be out for quite some time. This is essentially what that quick research found, surmised for you. It goes, generally with an effective antibiotic treatment, a straightforward bone infection may start to improve in a couple of weeks, though full recovery can take up to 12 weeks. More complex infections requiring surgical intervention can extend the recovery for several months, especially if the bone or tissue damage requires some rehabilitation afterwards. Returning to 100% fitness for an athlete involves ensuring the infection is fully cleared, followed by gradual rehabilitation to restore the strength and stability of the area. This often requires full-on physical therapy and a phased approach for weight-bearing activities. If the infection and the healing process goes well, an athlete might return to full activity within 3 or 6 months, but even some cases can take longer. So we could be looking at potentially Belal Muhammad out for the next 6 weeks before he is 100% ready to train, and then a 9-week training camp on top of that. What does that mean for Belal? That's the end. That's the end. You don't win titles at welterweight at 37 after nearly a year on the couch and not being training. 6 months plus the recovery, it's over. It's over for Belal, which sucks. I'm not jumping on the stacks on that, but it is what it is. The guy's 36 years old. He'll be 37 years old. There'll be the ring rust. It's one of the most competitive divisions in the UFC right now. It is what it is. Unfortunately, the sport moves quickly, and the UFC do have to move on. What do we do with UFC 310? There are already reports coming out that the UFC has actually called Alex Pereira and seriously offered him Magomed Ankalaev. I think this is a little bit of 4D chess by the UFC. Once again, trying to push Magomed Ankalaev back. Now, that doesn't make sense, Doug. What do you mean? You're trying to push him back? You just said they offered him a fight. Alex Pereira said that he wants to take off a couple of weeks, which, I mean, that's fair enough for Alex Pereira. But when it comes to the Magomed Ankalaev side of things, Magomed just fought this weekend. I believe that Magomed Ankalaev would say no to a short notice fight because the Dagestani guys, the Muslim guys, they like to do everything properly and everything by the book, which is totally fine. But that's how they like to run their careers. And stepping up for a short notice fight when you've just fought a couple of days ago is not exactly in their playbook. Now, once Magomed Ankalaev says no to that, the UFC can turn around and say, well, we offered him the title fight for UFC 300 and he said no. Now, whether or not it was his right to say no is irrelevant. The fact is that Magomed Ankalaev was practicing his holy period of Ramadan, which he is allowed to do, but the UFC did offer him that fight for UFC 300 and he did turn it down. It's a Western company. They're allowed to offer him that fight. And then they can turn around and say, well, we also offered you UFC 310. So you are not willing to play ball with the UFC. You do not want that title fight. This is the words that the UFC will say. And they will use that because Dana White does not like Magomed Ankalaev because he is so, in their eyes, in the UFC's eyes, so picky and choosy with when he is picking his fights and how he would like to fight. We know Dana White has got a fragile ego, and if you don't play ball with the UFC, they're not going to play ball back with you. So I think that is what the UFC is doing. I think they're going to legitimately offer Magomed Ankalaev this shot and wait for him to say no, and then use that to continue to push him back and say, we've offered him the title fight plenty of times. He doesn't want it, you guys. So moving on from that idea, Shavkat has put his hand up and said that he's willing to fight anybody for the interim title. Now, do I think there should be an interim title? For now, there should be an interim title. If there is no news on Belal Muhammad's recovery within the next 6 months or the next 3 months, 3 to 6 months to see how that toe is recovering, then maybe we should consider stripping him. But if things do go well, he could be back in there within 6 months, which is not that crazy. You know, the recovery time was that 3 to 6 months. So right now, interim title works totally fine. And of course, Kamaru Usman had something to say about it, dropping the emojis on Twitter, the look at me emojis. However, I do think Kamaru Usman just needs to shut up. Just shut up, Usman, all right? The dude is on 3 losses. He's been talking just unfiltered, absolute nonsense, non-stop at an unbelievable level on his podcast. He just needs to shut up, get in the cage with either Ian Gary or JDM, and get a win under his belt. You do not deserve to step in on short notice and fight for a title without at least 1 win when you have got 3 losses, okay? So I can still see the UFC pushing ahead with the division, right? And actually trying to set up the interim title. Now, this puts pressure on Ian Gary and JDM. Which one is actually going to be available for the date? This is very similar to the situation that Sean Strickland found himself in when he stepped up to fight Israel Adesanya, because he was the only one that was available at the time. Yeah, Jamal Hill went through the same thing. Glover Teixeira went through the same thing after the Ankalaev draw. So this is the moment in the UFC where if you're an athlete in the top 5 or the top 7, these are the moments that you live for. If you are a UFC athlete in the top 10, you need to stay ready at all times, especially if your title is on the bookings. If your division is on the bookings for a pay-per-view, you should be in training camp like you are going to be the one to step up for that fight. That is how the UFC has worked for years. And it looks like Ian Gary is the one that gets it. He's been the first one to react to this. So he has got the lead ahead of JDM. And he posted on his video, on his Instagram, a Twitter video of him talking about at a recent press conference how he is ready to swoop in and grab that title at any point.
There's some big names, there's some cool matchups. You know, there's Shavkat, 18-0, undefeated. I'd love to get my hands on him. I've trained with him. I have nothing but respect for the guy, but I want to be the first guy to take his own. I know I can do it. That fight.
So if I was picturing this race ahead of us, I would say that Shavkat versus Ian Gary is the direction that the UFC is looking to is the one that is looking to be the most likely at the moment. That's how I think that this race is being run right now. JDM, is he still recovering from his injury? Again, his bone got infected. Look how long he has been out. We'll wait to see and hear from JDM. Now, the talk of the town all week, this week, has been Sean Strickland potentially losing his title shot to Dricus du Plessis because of Khamzat Chimaev, right? Now, we know that Dricus du Plessis wants to fight in South Africa, but we also know from all the talk that has been going on around the media days that the South African Sporting Commission do not have a roof on one of their stadiums, and Dana White will not go there until they have a stadium with a completely enclosed octagon, right? He doesn't want wind, he doesn't want bugs, he doesn't want rain. So they have to build a roof and walls around one of their stadiums, which means we are not looking at South Africa until the very end of 2025 or the start of 2026. So Dricus needs to fight somebody in the meantime, doesn't he? And again, Khamzat Chimaev just fought a couple of days ago. Now, I'm sure Dricus du Plessis is nice and healthy because he's a professional athlete. Sean Strickland has been in training nonstop. All he does is post tweets of him in the training room. Sean Strickland should be beating the drum as loud as possible that he is in training and ready to go and ready to take up a fight with Dricus du Plessis at UFC 310. That is the best thing for Sean Strickland to do right now. We have talked about how the UFC feels like it's going in the direction of Khamzat Chimaev, but he just fought. He's not going to be available, okay? We have seen so many times this year that when a main event is locked in, even at a certain weight class, like, I don't know, Conor versus Chandler, the UFC is quite willing to pivot just as long as they have a better option to go with. And if Sean Strickland had a working cell in his brain, he should be calling up Ariel Helwani. He should be calling up DC and the bad guy. He should be live streaming on his Instagram. He should bloody call up the MMA guru, mate. He should do everything that he can to get the message out there that he is ready to go at UFC 310 and Dricus du Plessis can step up and save the day, because I don't know if Alex Pereira is going to do it for a 4th bloody time this year. Can the man not catch a break? Is anyone else in the UFC ready to grab their balls and actually throw them into the octagon and fight like a goddamn man, like Alex Pereira has done countless times, 3 times this year, but still 3 bloody times this year, mate. That's a lot. That's it. That's all the news. That's where we are right now. It looks like Shavkat is looking to take a fight. Who is he going to fight? Looks like Ian Gary is running that race. Kamaru Usman wants to step up. Piss off, mate. You don't deserve that fight. Sean Strickland, hello, knock on the door, right? Call Hunter Campbell right now. Let's get things moving. That is the information. That is the update on the Belal Muhammad situation. Obviously, this information is moving pretty quickly. So by the time this video goes up, some of it might be, out of date by then. Doesn't matter. If this is your first time here, my name is Dougie. I try and make an MMA video every single day. They're usually a lot funnier than this, I reckon, but today was a pretty serious one. I actually feel bad for Belal Muhammad. But if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button. I try and make a video every single day. I go live 3 times a week. Plus, we do live companion watch-alongs. It's a bloody great time. And boys, if you're one of the returning viewers that are already on board with the channel, you know what to do. Hit that like button, help this channel grow. And until then, I will see you guys later. Have yourselves a great day.